Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight, braving Nairobi roads to make it. Thank you also for your patience. We've given folks a bit more time to get here, since we do appreciate that Nairobi traffic can be quite hectic. But we will be starting now. And I'd like to welcome all of you. My name is Angela Crandall. I work as research manager at the iHub. And today we're very happy to, together with our partners at IDRC, present this research to you and also to explain its incredible relevance at this time. So I also would like to give a big hello and not forget to stand here towards the front because we do have members online. We are live streaming this on YouTube using Google On Air. So we will be using the hashtag tonight, #3Vs. That's #3VS. So if you find any of the things that we're talking about interesting remotely, please do feel free to tweet it out because that is part of the content of this evening. So without further ado, I would like to call upon several key members who have helped to make this research possible. First up, I will call our research director, Jessica Colasso, to come and say a few words about the iHub and also about how this fits under the bigger umbrella of iHub and iHub research.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing this evening? Relaxed? Excited to know how data can work for you? What kind of a framework you can use for process data? Well, your questions will be answered at this forum. On behalf of the iHub team, I would like to thank IDRC very much for supporting this research effort. The iHub, as you will hear, you're virtually at the iHub, which is an open innovation space for the Nairobi technology community. We seek to analyze the way the community works. We want the community to share the ideas, come together, brainstorm, meet up, and disseminate information with each other, thereby building a better Kenya through the entrepreneurial spirit that we have here to date. We have different departments at the iHub. The research arm is one of them. We have a user experience lab, and we have a supercluster computer and consulting arm. This acts as the demand to support the supply. And in this case, the supply here is the technology community, the different demands they do have from hosting their website, from asking, can you give me feedback on my application, when they can go to the user experience lab. They can pop down to the second floor and get latest statistics from the research lab, and bringing it all together on the fourth floor, coming together and just sharing information like we are doing today. As we know in this global world that global organizations are actually generating data on a petabyte scale. This data is really, really useful. It gives C-level CEOs, it gives middle-level managers, and it gives people like you and I and the common wananchi insights, key insights of what to do, discoveries, innovation. But the thing is, the question that we are asking is, how can we make the data work for us, as we know that data is the building block for information. And here at the iHub, we have a lot of people who have a very analytical mind, computer scientists in this field. Where the computer science graduates graduating out of the university, where can we apply what we learned? Data acts as fuel in the algorithmic world. And today, iHub Research has done that with the 3Vs with the support of IDRC. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Angela Crandall, and I do welcome you to the iHub. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. So it's also our pleasure to also be hosting the Nairobi-based IDRC team here at this event as well. And up next, we'll be hearing just briefly from Simon. Simon Carter is IDRC's regional director in Nairobi since 2010, and he joined in 1998 and has led the work on natural resource management and governance in Latin America and Caribbean. In 2006, he established the Climate Change Adaptation in Africa program to support Africans in their efforts to deal with the effects of climate change. He is an expert in environmental change and rural development and now leads IDRC's regional office for sub-Saharan Africa. He does hold a PhD in geography from the University of Newcastle upon Tyne. So let's give a round of applause. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Angela. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. After IDRC, welcome you. Thanks very much for allowing us to come and share in this event. Very briefly, IDRC is a Canadian crown corporation that for about 43 years has funded young and innovative people like yourselves to do research, do science in the interests of humanity and solving problems that affect people in their everyday lives, whether health, food, environment, economy, social policy. So it's great that we've been able to support ICOG in what I think is been a very, very innovative project. Our interests in supporting this project really come from believing that open science is crucial to moving forward, involving people in the processes of thinking, analyzing data, taking part in understanding what those data actually mean, what significance is for society. So my colleague here, Elliot Sear, and his colleagues in our Innovation and Networks program are doing a big push now on open data, open government, but also particularly open science, this idea that science is a social process that really should involve all of us. A couple of things to say about the project. We're very, very pleased with what I have been able to accomplish in a remarkably short time on the 3V's project: viability, validity, and verification. It's set up very close to the 2013 elections, which was building, and where we saw the importance of crowdsourcing information to really put some standards in place in terms of the helping to mediate the reporting that was going to be in around the election. But we think there's a much broader contribution from this project to the field of open science. Although the project's been fairly modest in terms of the funding we gave it, in terms of time frame and everything, it really has provided, I think, a practical framework, and it's showing the way on how this kind of work can be rolled out quite quickly and how it can make a significant difference. And for us, that's really important. The bottom line is that research should make a difference in lives. So kudos to you guys. Just looking forward a little bit, we're pleased that we're going to be able to support IHUB in collaboration with a Canadian organization, Sentinel, to look at how to deal with the challenges of misinformation that's coming out in situations of conflict. That has tremendous relevance, I think, both in Kenya and beyond within this region. So it's a very exciting work going forward. The last thing I want to say, basically, is that we're simply very, very proud to be working with you, supporting you. We're here in town, so it's easy to come to us. I'm hugely privileged, I think, to have our colleague Elliot Sear working with you. Elliott's been in Southeast Asia for a number of years, so seeing what can happen in a very dynamic context similar to what Nairobi is now doing. So we look forward to the future, and again, congratulations.
Thanks so much. So with those few remarks, we'd like to jump into some of the meaty bits. And I'd like to call upon the project team, Nanjira Sambuli, who was the research lead on this, together with Chris Orwa, who was our data miner, data scientist. Maybe you guys can turn it down a little. I think I'm quite loud. so we don't need to have it up so high. Thanks. Oh, Chris, you're so dynamic. You just make the sound systems go crazy. So Chris Orwa as well, all things techie. So I think you have the clicker. Let's jump right in.
I think I do. Everyone can hear me? Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. My name is Najira, and I'll just jump into some of the findings we had. I will not bore you down with details. You found copies of the report and the framework. And so we'll just highlight a few things. And what we're talking about today is how useful the tweet is, right? And we'll approach this in the sense that we're, trying to explain the tweet to someone who doesn't know, so that tomorrow they want to tweet. And those who have been tweeting can see the value in even tweeting more. So let's hope that works out. So some facts and figures about Twitter. It was launched in 2006. And as of March 2013, there are approximately 550 million active users worldwide. And of these, they generate about that we have about 200. Yeah. I don't really start that off. Yeah.
For learning.
Technological problems. So Twitter has about 200 million monthly active users. And this is a fun fact. An average of 400 million tweets are sent every day globally. And 60% of these are sent in Asia. So that just gives you a spectrum of what this Twitter thing, or as some people call it, the Twitter, looks like. So what we call Twitter is the tweets. Tweets are the people who tweet, or tweeters as they're called. A research that was conducted in 2010 found that Twitter is more of a news media than a social network based on how people share information. For those of you who tweet, you've noticed that when you go to set up a tweet, it asks you what's happening, right? So it almost sort of conditions you to share about what's happening, give a situational awareness about what's happening around you. We found that breaking news and coverage of real-time events all are shared under the 140 character limit. So, Twitter users search for up-to-the-second information and updates on unfolding events. And we'll reference this even the recent attack in Westgate Mall. So a lot of people even join Twitter to find information. Numbers shall come later. So Twitter for crowdsourcing, which is what we were looking at, that is collecting information from the crowd. Now, when you have about 400 million tweets being sent every day, what does that look like? It allows for a wide reach of people in inexpensive ways. You can send out tweets, depending on its reach, you might get a wealth of information. Now, crowdsourcing basically is about large amounts of data that can quickly be obtained and often in real time. It doesn't have to necessarily be through tech, but nowadays, most crowdsourcing and significant crowdsourcing can be conducted online, and even using mobile phones and mobile telephones like SMS. And one of the things crowdsourcing is doing is fostering citizen engagement with the information. A lot of you know that once you see a piece of information about a news event, people can critique, amplify it, even just downright dispute it. And so we're seeing a lot of citizen engagement around news and around breaking and around content. This is an example of what crowdsourcing looks like when visualized. And this was what our friends downstairs, Ushahidi, did for the Kenyan elections, and they called it Uchaguzi. And this was basically a visualization of the information they got about the elections and what was happening in different parts of the country. So what is it? What is there to future crowdsourcing? This is one of the things we looked into. And these are the three V's we talked about. Viability. In what situations or events is crowdsourcing a viable venture likely to excel worthwhile results? The other thing was validity, where we were wondering and asking ourselves, does crowdsourced information offer a true reflection of the reality on the ground? For instance, a tool like Twitter. Are the people who are using Twitter giving us like an overreached sense of what's happening? So maybe we're all tweeting from the iHand. So it sounds like something very inane, as me talking to you right now, is a big deal that the world should take notice. Or is it offering a situational awareness in as many parts of the country, for instance, as possible? And verification, and this is one that's a bit tricky, but is very interesting to explore, is whether there's a way to verify information provided through crowdsourcing, and if it's also invalid. And also, we will look at whether the verification process can be automated. So crowdsourcing during an election, one of the things we wanted to look at was what particular conditions crowdsourcing of information to be viable during an election, whether such information can be validated during an election period, and if so, what was the practical implementation of this such thing? And the third thing is, how do different crowdsourcing methods contribute to the quality of information collected? Why elections, and especially in Kenya? Elections in Kenya, we all know, have always sparked a lot of sentiment, opinions, conversations, and in the wake of social media, all the more. Citizens have an important role to play to contribute to information from the ground, especially about the election process and how it's unfolding in the various locations. Existing crowdsourcing initiatives such as the Chaguzi, that actively calls people to share information, made it viable for us to look into that as a source of information. And then, well, around crowdsourcing, there has been research and extensive research that has been done around disasters, but not around elections. So we're proud to say we're among the first to ever do the crowdsourcing-based research around election periods. That's your kitty clap. So why crowdsourcing Kenyan elections and courts? Courts meaning Kenyans on Twitter. Kenyans on Twitter, knowingly or unknowingly, have participated in crowdsourcing activity. Some of you may, I see a lot of people nodding their heads because they know what some of these things mean. Council K, in December last year, there was a field project, and that left a lot of people struggling. And people took to Twitter to help each other to get from point A to B. And that was a beautiful thing to observe how people organize. I think the year before that was also another fuel shortage, and even media houses and organizations that have a presence online organized around even sharing information that was shared on Twitter about where to find fuel. And that's why you go to one petrol station that has been tweeted about in 5 miles, 5 blocks down the petrol station. Another very interesting one was someone tells CNN in 2010, I believe, and even again, I think during this election, it came up where CNN have time and again gotten facts about Kenya wrong, and Kenyans have been quick to let them know that that's the wrong narrative. So Kenyans have knowingly or unknowingly participated in crowdsourcing. Now, just before we actually deployed this research project, during the Kenyan presidential debate, 90,000 tweets were generated in 2 hours about the debate itself. And this was just monitoring the hashtags that were being used at the time. And while we all know that most, if not all, the presidential candidates went digital, and well, we have a digital government, so that is why we looked into this. So the two types of crowdsourcing we looked at are basically the active model and the passive model. Now, an active model is where you make an open call for participation. The Shahidi crowd mob, for instance, during this election period had an SMS number, 3002, but they asked people, and they even sent out radio messages, and they partnered with different media to put a call out there for people to send information to their portal, and even using their hashtags, which are Chaguzi and others. And then the model that we employed was passive crowdsourcing, where we basically mined what people were talking about and analyze that later. So, we mined that using relevant hashtags and keywords. And what we did, I think Chris can explain from here.
Thank you, Nigeria. So when my colleague actually asked the bigger questions like, can you verify, can you validate, I'll ask the lesser questions. How do you compare Twitter data with traditional data? How do you compare with Jacuzzi and fieldwork, because it's with fieldwork, or the kind of finding events that were reported on Twitter, and they true, did they happen? So let me tell you to the research findings. So we collected about 2.3 million tweets around the elections. We used a number of hashtags, hashtags R and keywords. And from this pipeline, we were able to save from 2.6 million tweets to 12,000 tweets. I'll show you that's a feat. For anybody who's done a bit of data mining, you'll understand that in an election whereby you're getting about 9,000 tweets in every 2 hours, if you're having a crowdsourcing instance, you can be able to actually mine that data manually. So part of our question we wanted to answer as a sub-question was that if you're an NGO, a small organization having about 10 employees, is it possible for you to set up a crowdsourcing instance? Our answer was no. If you can't have a data mining expert, you can. And this is one research we are very much happy to share with everybody, because there's more data, but people don't know how to go about it. So in our findings, we find more kind of granular details on how we went about the process, and anybody who is doing it, you can just replicate what we did. Oh, this was some other interesting thing. Does Twitter actually break news? There's been research all over the world whereby people try to check like how can I tell whether an event actually has happened? Who reported it first? In our instance, we looked about situations whereby you can see Garissa, Homa Bay, Kisumu, Kakamega, and the Thika Road, where people were reporting tweets, actually something has happened. And from our timeline, we actually tell that Twitter actually does break news, even if it's with a 30-minute kind of lead time from any other media. So Twitter will always lead any form of media, and we're excited to be in this particular platform because the platform leads.
I think I can take up from here. This is like one particular instance that Twitter had a significant lead during the election. This was around the Supreme Court ruling about the election being free, fair, and fair. And on the 31st, that was the first day that an incident was found in traditional media. But this had been happening. Tweets had been generated on the 30th from Kisumu about the violence and the outbreaks that were. And at this point, I even want to point to the example of the Westgate incident. We have been manually searching through the Twitter archive, and there's been a wealth of data. The first tweet about the Westgate incident occurred at 12:28 p.m., where someone asked, as you can see, gunshots in Westlands, WTF. The first tweet by media about the attack was approximately 33 minutes later. And this was a tweet from K24, who had received a tip from one of their journalists, as you can see in the structure of the tweet itself. Now, 33 minutes and about 17 seconds is a significant time difference between someone hearing about gunshots and someone in media breaking it and sharing it on a medium like Twitter. The first authority or government institution that tweeted about it was the Disaster Operations Center at about 1:05 p.m. as well, who referenced Kenyans on Twitter reporting about gunfire being heard and around the state area. So Twitter breaks news, if nothing else, and we're proud to have had, we're not even really proud, but it's something we're happy to show. And so media houses here can now start taking pride and taking notice of the fact that there's a wealth of information that is waiting for you to tap into as far as news that is happening around the world. I'll hand it over back to my friend Chris to explain about the numbers here.
Thank you. So don't worry about the numbers. It's just a brief comparison of like if you wanted to do a crowdsourcing instance and you're receiving these streams of data, what's the best way to go about? So it's what we call a linear search. We employ people to kind of just categorize the data. Is it useful? Is it null? Categorize as maybe dangerous, less dangerous. And there is a keyword search whereby you're just searching through data about certain keywords like Nairobi, Westgate, or fuel, you understand? And then the last part is the machine learning, whereby we deploy statistical algorithms to just go through the data and give us back results. And as you see from our 2.6 million tweets, if you're to do it manually, it will take 270 days to actually go through the whole data. Not feasible. Everybody now. Yeah, and then kind of move on to a keyword search. If possibly, you kind of just track some number of keywords. It takes around 27 days to kind of do that particular work. In a real-time situation where you're monitoring real-time systems, it's 27 days is not a very not a good lag time for you to do the analysis. So this will come to a place where we like most of for the machine learning, where we say yes, it's very possible to do that. And for less than 1 second from what we deploy, we can actually tell if any new information is coming in. It's part of the answer to like when you're doing your NGO kind of any setup, you want to monitor data. It's very much not possible if you don't have any expert in this field to actually mine this data. So we're very happy to share this information. It's kind of in the realm whereby people are asking, am I able to do this? So we say yes, it's able, and the evidence is here.
It's able to be available. Now, even using the Westgate incident, we manually searched for this lead and to reconstruct the first half hour of how the Westgate incident was treated. Now, in 24 hours, we were able to reconstruct confidently the first half hour. But that took us 24 hours, and it was a very labor-intensive job. Any further analysis that we have and we plan to do around the incident will require machine learning techniques, hopefully we already have an algorithm to train, and now we have the data. So it's all about putting it in there and coming up with some different results from that. So in the next couple of weeks, we can expect that from us. We've actually also put up a blog post explaining further about the first half hour, or specifically the first 12 minutes of the West Gate exam, and who fitted what when. In summary, yay, we're coming to the end, yay. What we're saying here is that Kenyan social media is rich with content, with real-time updates and happenings that might not be present in mainstream media reports. Also saying that mining of crowdsourced data appears to be of high value when one is looking for timely local information, and there are indeed considerations that are useful in assessing and running an election-based crowdsourcing. And to this end, we devised a framework that helps you, guides you through some questions when you're trying to deploy crowdsourcing framework. The visual may not be very clear, but maybe on some of your tables, and it just basically shows some key considerations around the data for data you desire, the freedom and risk factors to consider, especially if you're trying to deploy something using online and mobile technology, technology-based factors to consider, and some of the crowdsourcing options. Now, this visual has also been accompanied by a separate framework document that we welcome you to read and share back to the feedback with us. Next slide, please.
Okay, so part of our next steps we're looking into, instead of them moving to the steps of doing real-time analysis of tweets, as you realize, analysis you have to do have to collect historical data, then do some form of analysis. But in a crisis situation, you need to have a real-time updates. So as part of our next step, we're looking into maybe reducing the time for doing a real-time analysis to maybe less than 30 minutes, whereby we give a response to maybe the police, the Red Cross, or anybody who needs information in real time. Also part of it is like providing tools for verifying crowdsourcing information, as the media agencies and the police and any other humanitarian agencies actually require to verify because they need to report these particular incidences to maybe document them. So our next iteration of the process is actually building tools apart from the framework. You could embed it on Twitter or on Shahidi or any kind of native built crowdsourcing framework for you. Actually, just instead of having 20,000 tweets a minute, you only have 5 or 2 in a minute. And as part of that, we like to invite our media partners, kind of take this particular framework, maybe integrate it into the process of how you collect news. If probably you've never used Twitter, probably you can tell your manager is a new way of collecting data.
So with that, I'll hand over to Angela to take us through this.
Thank you, team, very much. Big round of applause. Thank you for keeping it brief. For those of you who still have, if you want to see the graphics maybe a bit more in depth, you have them in the printed copies right in front of you. And we also have soft copy reports online. So I'd like to open up the floor. I know that many of you maybe have some burning questions. So if anyone wants to raise their hands, perhaps, ask some follow-ups. Otherwise, I do have some questions for the audience. Yes, and maybe don't forget to introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Ken Morgan. Thank you for the team for brief. You talked about mining information on Twitter. What current methods are you using for verification? You talked about the process of getting information, but what are you actually doing to verify and validate? The second question is, what is the potential for a feedback system and what kind of system? This is passive, like you can say, analysis of information. What about if someone actually generates information and sees that there's a return of getting the correct information?
Let me answer the first question. As to pertaining to verification, there's kind of what you call a ranking system. You can assign higher scores, like if somebody enabled the tweets and they mentioned that I'm in storage center and actually what happens in a storage center, higher score. If it's reported from a first person witness, it's a higher score. So verification is not 100%, but you can assign higher score to make it data more usable to other people.
And I think just to add on to that, we did a post-analysis, so we were not, the real-time verification is what we come up with now is best practices. But in future, we actually look forward methods. And such a ranking system is actually very useful when you do an active call. But when you do that active call, it's in a format where if I make a call to you and you bring in someone else, you're responsible for whether they share credible information. And so there's a sort of reward system and punishment system behind it. So that's actually an option, a very viable option.
I think maybe just also add on the first question, this is what I like to say a draft framework. So the idea is hopefully, as you saw in the next steps, that people will also test this framework, see what else they can add to it, and continue to contribute. And as Simon mentioned, we did have a bit of a limited time period to also run this. So we are looking to hopefully continue to do this work. This is not the end by any means, and we are looking to do more inquiry around the 3 V's.
Hi everyone, my name is Coronia, and I'm really proud of these guys. They've done a great job. My question is, does the algorithm incorporate a minimum number? So in other words, is it that if there's a news event that is reported by 5 people, does it take a percentage of that 5? Does it have a minimum number of tweets before it's considered? So it's a minimum number of the current tweets. So now it's 5 people talking about rescue, for example, out of 500 opinions. That's only to give it a rank. Is it considered?
So the algorithm uses what you call cross-validation. If at least 3 people mention the same thing, so it's a cheap for it. So there's a cross-validation for at least 3 people to kind of make it more something you can track.
Hi, I'm Limo. I work for Shahidi. What machine learning tools are accessible, say, to a small NGO or small media house which wants to implement this?
Okay, so we use open source technology and software for like Weka, Python programming. So all these tools are available for free. And also Python has other packages that you can just download for free and use. So most of the pack we use are open source softwares that are available to anybody to download directly to you if you.
And I think this might be a good time to also mention, perhaps some of you were around on Tuesday when we were happy to launch our new iHub Research Data Visualization and Science Lab, and Chris also works for that team. So we do have available resources, even if you are a small startup, to work together with you to help you to even do this kind of stuff. So when we mentioned in one of the slides that you need machine learning, that's not to try and isolate you and leave you high and dry. We're here for you. So if you need assistance in doing this kind of work, we're more than happy to work together with you. And we are hoping that we can develop another open source software that can also help to run this kind of algorithms to assist you all. Someone had their hand up there, I think.
I was following up on Kalwanya's question. My name is Leo. I actually work for iHub Research. I'm putting myself on the spot. You mentioned we need people to at least validate an instance, but at least with simulate structure, how do you make sure that it's not retweets?
Actually, when they come to about how the tweet structure is, if it's a retweet, it means there's an interest why people are tweeting. So for the 3 people, it means it's a point of interest. It's something to look into. So instead of having individual tweets, very, very language and so many, just you're tracking down what's could be useful in a good time. So at least 3 people retweet it. It's a good time to start tracking it down.
Or I think this will add on to that. If the 3 tweets have similar keywords, so that someone's maybe personal with Instagram, mention the place where an incident is happening, that treats you that is something that you
This is really interesting. So I think my geek side has been awakened. Anyway, so if you have 3 tweets and it's 3 tweets about chapati in Bungoma, how is it? Do you not need a human person? Because I know, like for Umati, we're going towards machine learning, but you still need that human element to sieve out, maybe not say useless information, but information that is not going to be useful to the masses. So do you still need the machine learning tool to work? But you still need now a level of human human processing, so that now they'll be able to tell this is chapati Ngoma, we don't need that omission. But now we need something like, I don't know, an attack somewhere.
Thank you for the question, because one of the reasons why we're doing this is because it's about replacing the number of people needed to actually monitor particular streams. If you have any job or crowdsourcing, you have like 10 people monitoring. But if you only have one person, you can just tell that it is not important. But at the same time, you'll be tracking something of interest to you, so you have keywords. Even for the West Gate also elections, you're tracking keywords. So if it's what you call like chapati, or just even chapati during election, that's part of how we move from 2.6 million tweets to 10,000 tweets. These are 12,000 tweets of interest to us. So the other gap of what we call not very useful information. So part of the algorithm is what we call a spam filter. It filters off the noise from whatever you need. So using those keywords, you can set directly to whatever is most of interest to you with a given level of challenge.
But also this is some human elements. It's valuable, especially when you have something to follow up. And I use an example of the election group. One of the first things on the day of the election that I caught up to was about what was happening in Massa. And what I did was also like maybe prompt that person to send in more information, and even to actually send that piece of information to whichever who had that verification mechanism. So there's that value. Even the West Cape, for instance, how we came around to find the first stage was actually knowing, having a situational knowledge of what was around Muslims. So if someone heard something, they'd likely be in Muslims. And again, now zeroing in it. So there's still that value of having a human element touch. But as Chris rightly said, it just helps reduce the number of people who have to actively do it.
And maybe just to add on top of that, one of the ways how we knew that this would actually probably add value and make the job of media journalists a bit easier was that we actually did over 10 interviews with local journalists, both local and international media houses, and realized that the way currently they're using social media is just following a handful of what they deem as sort of Twitter bigwigs, the people who are quite influential online. But often you find that that's not necessarily the person who will be on the scene, on the ground, ready to observe whatever it is. And so often you find that someone who maybe has 100 followers who actually is the eyewitness. So it's important to then, but if you open it up to that level, now you're looking at 2.6 million tweets. So it's a trade-off, right? You can't, if you want the good information, if you want to be the first one to write that news article, you're going to have to figure out a way to go through all that big data. So this is sort of where we realized that this was very relevant. Yes, I see. I'm going to go first here and come back here.
My name is Laban. I'm the founder of I would like to, it's also a crowdsourcing tool for so I'd like to ask you just a few questions. And one is, you emphasize Twitter, but you know that there's a lot of that out there of people who are basically. So do you guys, are you just limited or not? Answer that. And then people have different ways of reporting. So when it comes to machine learning, I don't know how you handle that. For example, I'll give an example. Someone would say e-highway, so highway. So maybe how will you deal with that algorithm? Then also to pick out the context. Because if I make a sentence right now, based on the context, so just highlight on how you deal with that.
Because I'll answer your first question. We focus mostly on Twitter because information generated to Twitter is public information, making it easy to mine. Now, up until very recently, Facebook introduced hashtags. So it's actually possible to mine based on that particular hashtag and then collect information. But it's also limited to other people make that information public. And the same thing with Google Plus. When you actually go to share on Google Plus or on Facebook, you have an option to either make the post public or just within friends. So that is why we focus primarily on Twitter. Before you answer, there's a question you asked, the second question I believe about machine learning. We were limited. We have to actually say our scope is actually 150 knowledge to be able to feed the classifier, and then would actually return us results in good time. But I think there's a possibility, and we're looking into training classifiers for different languages. Now, the problem with Gen is today it's Brazil, tomorrow it's Brazil, tomorrow it's the day after that is. But then the question about characteristics, so when you're reporting something that's happening around you, I think there's, and this is mostly intuitive, it's, you will actually give a situational awareness as opposed to referencing it to the Prezo highway has traffic, you know. So, but then that's some of the challenges. But I think a serious person trying to give information, always information by the way, will actually structure it in a way that you can pick up on it. Yeah, this will be
Okay, just remind me, we had a big debate with Angela, wanting to do some part of the research into our writings to the power of the language confidence. Because after doing some analysis, we discovered that anybody whose language confidence fell above around 80%, they don't have actually good information. But Kenya, we're a bilingual country, so I may report something using a mix of Swahili and English. And the algorithm kind of calculated to go because the language confidence is because of the mixture of the language. So it is a challenge in how to operate language. But one of doing that about language is having translators, having somebody or a machine that translates fast, and then do the analysis after the translation. About the context, we don't worry about the context because of the machine filter. If you don't have the tweet structured in a way that you're reporting it, what we call the fast password to be flagged as a noise tweet. So you can say confidently that actually about context, the tweets that we narrowed down were very much within the context of the election about and reporting.
I think I'm happy to see that this is spurring discussion. But I do also know that many of you might be a little bit parched, and we did promise you a cocktail. So I will take maybe 2 more questions. We'll have a small closing remark, and then this will actually be opened, so you can actually ask Chris more technical questions. You can ask the rest of us additional questions as well. So the last select few will be these 2.
So for time, I will leave the question to come ask you later. So these are 2 general questions. One, you talked about the tool. You said that the open source and everything. What about the algorithm? About the structure, process, and everything? How is that availability for every common person? And secondly, you talked about determining that you have at least, I don't know if you've already done it, some result of determining or the result of actually running the framework somewhere. You have some results, so you can look at it and see the progress.
All the results of the data mining, we have all of them documented. It's more of a technical report, so most people are not tech savvy. So if you need the technical report, just shoot an email. Feel free to send the reports. About the algorithm, we still have it in-house, and we probably I hope
And you have to clean it up right now. It's still very much.
So the algorithm is part of a data science organization lab, and we believe very much in the concept at IDRC of putting open science. We want computer scientists in this room and want enthusiasts in the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning to contribute to this algorithm, to the capable intelligence. The questions that are being asked, for example, 5 people repeated, what other parameters do we look at? There are things that other researchers can contribute and make the algorithm more effective. And I think, remember what we said is that globally companies are generating data on a petabyte scale. In order to make this data useful and informative, it takes years of collection to actually get true valuable insights. So, ladies and gentlemen, the journey is just starting. IDRC and I are contributing to this journey, and together with this community, we seek to promote open science by contributing to our
Eric, to look for something specific. So I was thinking, have you deployed tests to look for to see what problems are? And it's a tool that we use
Yeah, absolutely, it's possible. You're right, we actually focus events, and we had to find a reliability factors that predated those events. I mean, worst case sort of happened upon us, but with the election, it was something that was actually pre-selected and pre-thought out. But it's possible, and especially using passive crowdsourcing, maybe if you do a daily data dump of information that's being generated, and then you sort of maybe go through it, or your algorithm starts picking up a keyword that was used maybe many times in most tweets. Too many chapatis. Maybe just in Kenya, that day people wanted to eat chapatis. Happy day. I mean, that's still newsworthy, right? I mean, on one day people are all eating about chapatis in different areas. That's something, right? So there's a story in everything. It's all about how you set up mechanisms to mine the data, but it's actually very possible. And maybe in future we'll actually deploy that, and I hope we can do
Just to add on this, part of our next step was to do the real-time analysis. Part of it is that track information within real time. So we're looking to track various things.
I actually wasn't joking when I said I have questions, so I will be putting them up, and I hope that that will help to spur some of this discussion as we make a line, a very orderly, nice line to grab our drinks. Don't all rush there. But before we close, I would like to invite up a great man who I've been working very closely with over the past few months as we run this project, and who I hope to continue to work together with. Elios here, and he was mentioned earlier. He's the Senior Program Specialist at IDRC in Information and Networks, and he is based here. Lucky us. And before joining IDRC, he actually spent 16 years as a research scientist in Africa, working on applications of biotechnology to address various pests and diseases. And his work has actually led to over 60 publications, a patent, and an international award, as well as recognition from the Institute of Genomic Research. He's also established BioNet Africa, a Pan-African Bioscience and Biotech network, and holds a PhD in biosciences from the University of Arizona. So with that, please.
Just to say that I'm not great, but I'm pleased to be here. Yeah, let me just start with the end and say that we are really very pleased to be here. And as IDRC, as Simon said, we are really pleased to have done this work with IHAC. You know, we just met by accident, but I think this has been a very useful interaction. Let me also thank all of you who have been able to come. I think this is really great, and the feedback that I had, I think it's all really fantastic. This is just the beginning, so we look forward to doing a bit more. Now, just a couple of points. One is that our interest is on open and collaborative science. But it's not just science as we think of it in that narrow sense, but it is open approaches to doing science and technology development and innovation. So it's not just science, it is much more than that. Let me also say that it is not just blue sky science, but it is science that underpins development, right? So things like election, monitoring air pollution, sexual violence, all these things can potentially benefit from this approach here. So I just want to be clear about the application of the science that we're talking about. Second point is that when I was a student, science was the result of a few people wearing lab coats. All right? But as has been mentioned, now I'm more of a recovering academic or a recovering researcher. Now the space is being opened a bit more, and this is why we are talking about citizens. And citizens, they sound like citizens can be anybody. So it's just to increase the engagement. I think that's what we're talking about. And the idea that non-scientists, those people who are wearing lab coats, can also be engaged, I think is very important. I think for a long time, the value of science was not very much realized because it was being done in a corner somewhere. But now we have a chance to be involved, and I think this is also along the lines of democratization of science to bring in everybody. So you're involved, the users are involved, you guys are involved, everybody's involved. So I think this is fantastic. The second point is that the whole idea of the quality. So it's not just open, but if it is open, what is the quality of it? And this is why I think we have been working with IHAB to develop a framework for validating this kind of data collection. So for us, this is really very important because if we can show that it is possible to validate and to test the quality of crowdsourced data, then I think we are very much along the way to making this to be an acceptable part of data collection. I mean, you can imagine people who are doing surveys spending thousands of dollars or shillings. You know, if you can mobilize the public to do this, it will be much more efficient and much faster. So anyway, once again, we are really very pleased, and we are really hoping that this collaboration will continue, and of course, we'd like to involve all of you. This is crowdsourcing, right?
So with that, I would like to invite you all to check out some of these questions and talk to your neighbor as you stand in line for some refreshments. Thank you all again for coming, and we look forward to engaging with you further.